You know the Olympus Pen F is aiming to be more than just a camera when the box arrives. A Russian oligarch would be happy to give his mistress a pair of £2,000 diamond-encrusted knickers in this box. The Pen F inside doesn't let you down. The original Olympus Pen F film camera was from the 1960s, but though there is a resemblance, it obviously wasn't classy enough, so this Pen F is modelled on the Leica 3 series, sold from the 1930s to the 1960s. The Pen F weighs about the same as the Leica 2, but is a little smaller across. Leica's branding was more subtle. You knew you were using a Leica, and anyone whose opinion you cared about would know it too. We're a little less self-assured these days, so the Olympus Pen logo is blazoned on the front. I've gone on a bit about the looks, because the Pen F's unique selling point and desirability is in the retro appearance. So, looks apart, how does it shape up? The major difference between the Pen F and its pen siblings is the electronic viewfinder and the image sensor, which is now a 20 megapixel 5184 by 3888 pixel affair, up from the 4608 by 3456 of the EMs. It's the same Sony sensor as in Panasonic's GX8. Apart from that, the Pen F specs are very similar to the M5 Mark IIs, but with the smaller viewfinder from the M10 Mark II. It's a bit smaller than the M5 Mark II overall, but with the left-placed EVF and different control placement feels very different. It's bigger overall than its pen stablemates, which have no EVF of course, and noticeably heavier. We have a fully articulated monitor, a physical exposure compensation dial a la Panasonic GX8, a side-to-side lever under the mode dial, and a creative dial on the front. The lever is used in conjunction with the front and rear dials to choose parameter settings on the creative dial or to present highlight shadows control in normal use. The creative dial takes over some functions previously set with the mode dial, and apart from emphasising the Pen F's Leica impersonation, frees up mode dial space for four proper marked custom settings. No more set, my set, reset, my set, set, my set, reset, you set, and then set it on the mode dial art position only to forget what you set where 5 minutes later. Funnily enough, for me those 4 custom positions, and this, the newly marked arrow pad, do more to make this camera attractive than any Leica look or creative control gizmo ever could. The mode dial now has 10 positions, each one of which justifies its spot. It all serves to make me feel in control and is very pleasing. If you do miss the scene or storybook modes, they can be reinstated to custom 3 or 4 by the way. If you're a dyed-in-the-wool RAW shooter, the front creative dial is redundant, so it really should be programmable. Direct control of a subset of shooting modes, say. Set any 4 of your most used like anti-shock silent, sequential low 2-second delay. Or direct setting of the 4 AF area types. If you do use JPEG, or you prefer to nail your results in camera rather than mess about on a computer afterwards, the creative dial is very useful. My feeling is that the most used setting will be mono. It just feels right on the Pen F given its retro feel, and it's very versatile. A twitch either way on the lever lets you toggle 8 variable strength colour filters, highlight shadow control, which equates to curves in Photoshop, and shading, which equates to vignetting. A set of lights filters would have cost you the price of the camera back in the 50s. Having set mono, hit OK and you can choose 3 different types of result. For my money, mode 2 set to high grain is the best. It's the most extreme but also the most grittily black and white, a kind of instant documentary look. I wouldn't have taken this shot of a swan in colour. Viewing and photographing a scene in monochrome is very different from viewing in colour and converting to black and white afterwards. It's your same eyes and mind, but your visual perception of shape and form is enhanced without the distraction of colour. For video, the Pen F has all the facilities a non-specialist will need. You don't have a mic or headphone sockets, but the stereo sound is pretty good. How they do it with these tiny mics I don't understand. This footage is simple point and shoot at FHD 30 megabits per second. There's no 4K video on Olympus cameras of course. It's good enough for me to the point where a Panasonic body offers no video advantage. On top of all this, you have all the Olympus Micro Four Thirds staples, including state-of-the-art stabilisation, converging verticals correction and focus bracketing, but not stacking. In use, the first thing to say is that, probably unlike diamond-encrusted knickers, the camera feels as good as it looks. It is satisfyingly weighty and sturdy feeling. For me, it is at the lower limit of size that I can use without it feeling fumbly. Even though the M5 Mark II is a similar size, the F doesn't feel as cramped as that camera does, and I find its layout very amenable. Even so, I have to disable the Function 1 button because my index finger trips it all the time. Nevertheless, the best handling Olympus yet, including the M1 without the battery grip. Out and about, I find this camera has a chameleon character. With my 17mm and 45mm prime lenses, it's an old-time rangefinder, a classic street machine. With the Pro zooms, it's a regular Micro Four Thirds camera, big enough to feel like a serious tool, small enough to keep to Micro Four Thirds values. Some photographers find larger lenses unbalanced on a smallish body combined with left-mounted EVF, but I don't with the F. They balance nicely in my hands. Plus, with the target AF on, you can use your left thumb to alter the focus point while using EVF. Panasonic have had that for a long time, and it's nice to see it on an Olympus. But then put on a tiny lens like the Panasonic 12 to 32mm, and you're in territory only Micro Four Thirds can inhabit. A camera that will fit in a hand or shoulder bag, plus image quality with which you could earn a living. Add one of the smaller telezooms like the Panasonic 35 to 100 f456, and it's a capable outfit in a small bag. The fully articulated monitor is a huge bonus over the other pen cameras in my view. I know some photographers prefer the swivelling type for stealthy street framing, but given that you can't have both, Olympus have made the right choice here. It makes the camera much more widely useful, on a tripod, shooting video, portrait orientation for example, and if you adjust your handhold it's almost as stealthy anyway. The biggest single compromise to the rangefinder styling is the electronic viewfinder. It is noticeably smaller than the M5 Mark II and the M1, and the same as the M10 Mark II. Does it matter? Yes it does, because bigger is always better with a viewfinder. But don't mistake smaller for small. To the extent that it suffers, it's only when compared side by side with its DSLR-style stablemates. Standalone, it's bright and colourful and manual focusing is no problem. All in all, although the camera is pretty and compact, it isn't at the expense of function. You still have the high-resolution time-lapse and bracketing modes. The Pen F may be wearing different clothes, but underneath it all is a modern, fully featured Olympus Micro Four Thirds camera. Like more and more Micro Four Thirds cameras now, there is no built-in flash, but Olympus supply a tiny swivel head gun which fills my needs. Just as I moan at Olympus for not supplying hoods with some of their lenses, what are Panasonic thinking about not supplying a flash with their GX8? How does it perform technically? My only observation on image quality is the same as on the Panasonic GX8 with the same sensor. You have more pixels but not more noise. My key scientific observation is that is nice, because it gives you more breathing space for a crop. I sometimes use it to frame a little less tightly, giving myself a bit more room to correct perspective without losing subject content. Single-shot autofocus is as satisfyingly fast as all the recent Olympus cameras. Continuous autofocus is pretty good. Like the M5 Mark II, there is no aid to the contrast focus system, no depth from defocus, database or phase detection pixels, but it works well. This is not a particularly difficult task, with the cars coming directly to or away from the camera, and the 40 to 150mm zoom set at f2.8. I shot 10 sequences like this, and this one is typical. We have only 4 frames actually off focus and unusable, 4 frames into the sequence. It seems to be while the camera is deciding speed and direction of travel. The next 25 frames would all be usable at 100%. This is not a matter of depth of field. Here is a 100% pull-up of the final frame, where you can see that the rear of the vehicle is way out of focus. The problem is not inaccuracy but inconsistency. You can never tell when the camera will lose focus. However, it picks it up again pretty quickly. Let's keep this in perspective. while this performance is not the best among modern cameras, it is competitive with many DSLRs, which themselves are far from 100% reliable. Often the biggest problem with AFC on any camera is not actually the camera's focusing, but the difficulty of keeping the focus area on target. One last performance observation. With the new sensor, the high resolution mode comes in at 50 megapixels. If your lens has any faults, this shows them up absolutely without mercy. Summing up, I noticed it has taken me longer to get to know the Pen F than most cameras. The looks cloud my judgment. I remember once coming across a beautifully exotic looking cat. Expecting aloofness, to my amazement when I stroked it, it rolled right over on its back for more. It didn't know it was beautiful. Underneath the looks, it was just another cat. Underneath, the Pen F is just another camera. At root, it's an EM5 Mark II with EM10 Mark II viewfinder. As such, you could ask why it costs more than that would imply, but there is a valid reason. It's tactile in a way that the others are not. It is appealing in a way they are not. All the screws are hidden. Trivial, and like the bulletproof carved from metal serious camera Leica feel, it won't improve your pictures. But for many people, aesthetics really matter. I prefer a good looking and feeling camera. It makes me want to use it more, and that's priceless. It has faults enough to mean that for me, it couldn't be my only camera. Something in the design has caused Olympus designers to put the tripod socket in a rather awkward forward position. It means that some of my favourite lenses can't be used with my main tripod head because it fouls the lens base. It has a touchscreen, but you can't touch set the menus. And the menu system, while no different from other Olympuses, remains an Achilles heel. Yes, you get used to it, but it is overly complex and unintuitive. For example, the high-res mode, there it is in the menu. When you open it, you see off. There's no on setting though, just a series of delay times from 0 to 30 seconds. Fair enough, I choose 0. So now I'll be set to take a high-res pic, right? No, nothing changes. High-res is set to on only via the Super Control panel. Having made so much effort to make the Pen F well handling, it would be good to have seen the menu modernised to match. Should you buy one? If you're simply looking for a good all-round Micro Four Thirds camera, no. Apart from the sensor, the M5 Mark II does everything this does, but with a better viewfinder and weather sealing. In fact, given that the Pen F lacks the weather sealing and has the same EVF, it has more in common with the M10 Mark II at less than half the price. To put that in perspective, at the time of writing you could buy an EM10 Mark II body with Olympus 17mm f1.8 and 45mm f1.8 primes for exactly the same price as the Pen F body only. And the EM10 Mark II has a microphone input too. For me, in use, the Pen F is two basic cameras. One is a normal versatile Micro Four Thirds all-rounder. The other is a monochrome street and documentary Leica style camera. While it is true you can go mono in post-processing, there is nothing quite like observing the world around you in the form you will photograph it. You see and compose differently. Is the Pen F ultimately worth its premium price? Picking up and handling it, looking at it sitting on a table with a 17mm fitted. For the pleasure it gives, yes, absolutely. With those diamond encrusted knickers, if you strip away the diamonds, you are left with a perfectly good but very expensive pair of panties. With the Pen F, strip away the classic Leica form and construction, and you are left with a very good but very expensive, not quite top of the line Micro Four Thirds camera. If you want to look and feel good, and to thoroughly enjoy taking quality pictures, the Pen F is a gem. It makes using a camera doubly pleasurable, form and function. For me, if I was spending this kind of money, I'd sacrifice some form for state-of-the-art functionality. The phase detection focusing of the EM1, the video prowess of the GH4 for example. But that's personal. The new to Olympus bigger sensor future-proofs the Pen F to some extent. And in the long term, the Leica looks, sturdy construction and pleasure in ownership will remain. As the car maker André Citroën said, the quality is remembered long after the price is forgotten. Unfortunately, pleasure, like everything else in life, has a price. Thanks for watching.